Hello, and here is the final evaluation question for our A2 Media coursework. Here we will be discussing the various media technologies that we use during each stage of production. This may or may not end up listing anything and everything that has been touched throughout this process, and at times I may end up repeating myself, but we can't leave any stone unturned, can we? Let's start at the beginning, a very good place to start. During our research stage, we set out to find examples of our chosen brief, in this case a music video, digipack album cover and poster, that were relevant to the direction we wanted to go in with our own product, as well as some that went somewhere else entirely. In order to do this, we used one main tool, the internet. As unreliable as it often is, using Google, other search engines are available, to find relevant artists and YouTube to take a glimpse of their work and decide what features we'd take into our own work was, in all honesty, completely necessary in order to do anything resembling a competent amount of research. To go alongside this, we also use SurveyMonkey to design audience questionnaires in order to find out who our target audience for the product would be, and perhaps more importantly, what they would want to see in our video. Throughout research, and indeed the whole process, it was important that the three of us communicated with each other, whether it was to exchange ideas or to simply pass on login details for the blog, which we had created using Wix. If none of us spoke to each other, then we'd never share our ideas and the whole thing would fall apart quite spectacularly. To avoid this happening, we used our college emails to share important information when we weren't all in college. In comparison to our AS year, these methods of research and communication aren't too different to what we used, although we had been able to take more advantage of these mediums and use the information we had gathered to greater effect. In other words, we drew more influence from the work we researched and tried to incorporate audience feedback into our own work as much as possible. Now onto the pre-production stage, where things begin to get a bit more interesting. If we brush aside the use of YouTube to upload production meetings, as I've already covered how we use it in research, there are various other technologies that we use in this particular phase. Keeping with the production meetings, we used a video camera in order to record them, and if I'm honest, there isn't much more to say about them than that. With regard to other areas of pre-production, where there is comparatively more I can say, there are still other technologies that we used. For instance, our auditions poster was created using Publisher. As basic as that might seem, we wanted to create something that looked professional, whilst also not wasting time which could be better spent on our products later on. Since we also planned on doing a music video, we needed to obtain permission to use this song in our work. As such, we used Twitter to send a message to the label asking for this permission, as we couldn't find an email address that belonged to them. Here's a screenshot for evidence. Also, we used a combination of search engines and a digital camera in order to find photographs of potential locations, as well as potential costume choices for our performers. This was to ensure that the three of us could make joint decisions about what we should and shouldn't use in our final production, rather than letting one person decide costume, etc., and having the rest of the group find out during the production process and objecting to it then. After all, if something like that happened, we never get anything done and the whole thing would go hideously wrong in no time. During the production phase, the range of technologies used really began to increase. Aside from the two types of cameras which we used to capture the images and video footage that we needed, we also used the college media studio in order to film some other shots. This mainly consisted of using the studio's light controls in order to create an ambient effect. Also, we used a lot of editing software to make our products better. In the case of the video, this was mainly Adobe Premiere and Adobe After Effects. Premiere was primarily used in order to actually piece the clips together, but also came in useful for some of the effects it had to offer. The black and white shots of our performer, for instance, were edited in Premiere as opposed to After Effects. What After Effects was used for, however, was relatively crucial. During our research, we had decided that we would probably end up using some form of old filter effect in our video, and had begun trying to find ways that this could be achieved. We used After Effects to get this effect done to the shots we didn't film in the studio. I would explain how we did this, but that would take too long, so that's why you've been watching some footage of me editing a sample clip this whole time. Now onto the poster and digipack, which both heavily used Adobe Photoshop in the editing stages, and as a result I've decided to talk about both of them together because I'll end up repeating myself otherwise. For these two products, we used Photoshop in order to adjust certain aspects of our model's photograph, such as dark or light spots around the eyes, or general aspects of the products which needed refining like the background, as well as cloning our model in our first draft. Background editing involves softening the edges of some of our images, as well as experimenting with various images which would link to other aspects of our products, i.e. video and album cover. Speaking of the album cover, we used some similar tools to the poster, but what we also included was a sort of filter effect on the images we chose. Similar to the video, we decided that we would attempt to create a vintage feel to our products, and thought that adding some grain or filter to our images would help to create that effect in our print products. In comparison to AS, we use more technologies and tools with these products due to the aspects of the pieces we researched which we decided we would like to implement in our work. And as a direct result, we had to find ways of achieving this using the software we had at our disposal, which we were able to do, particularly in the video. And finally, to our evaluation stage, of which this is a part. I've now decided to completely disregard a sensible order and discuss this question, question 4, first. Since this is an audio commentary of sorts, a script had to be produced first. Improvising something like this would quite frankly have been disastrous, and this was done using Microsoft Word. You should see a screenshot of part of the script at some point, with the audio being recorded through a combination of Audacity in order to listen back to it and maybe re-record numerous times, and a Rode NT1A model microphone. Given that there were also images and video during this time, otherwise you'd have been looking at a black screen, we also used Premiere again to edit them with the audio. For our other questions, we also used Prezi in question 1 and another website called Haiku Deck in question 3 to present our responses to those particular questions in a more sophisticated manner than PowerPoint, which both act as alternatives to. Staying with question 3, we also used Facebook to share our products and gauge audience feedback, which would have been important anyway as a method of finding possible improvements to our products. Question 2, meanwhile, used a site called Poplet to present our 3 products simultaneously and allowed us to comment on how they all link together. Compared with AS, we used a wider variety of technologies in order to present our responses to these questions. Although a couple of us had used Prezi last year, none of us had, for instance, used Haiku Deck at any point previously. This meant that we essentially had to learn how to use entirely new software in just a few weeks, and whilst that sounds stressful enough, we managed to figure out how everything worked quickly enough. And that's it. That's how we use technologies in our A2 coursework, stage by stage. I'm very aware that I may have taught your ears off by this point, but like I said at the beginning, I wasn't going to risk leaving any stone unturned. Thanks for listening.